Pokemon 1000, the string cheese man himself, Gholdengo. Now, although a lot of you are probably familiar with Gholdengo's hazard blocking hijinks in OU, where it's obviously really good, it's actually become quite a good pick in UUbers UU as well, the tier right below UUbers. And although the power level there is a lot higher, Gholdengo has a legitimate role there offensively, defensively, and just for general utility. I just want to talk about it because I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Gholdengo. Now, first of all, let's go over his utility, get the obvious out of the way. Good as gold, right? Amazing ability, possibly the best ability ever made. This blocks any status moves, so Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, Leech Seed, Roar, Taunt. None of these work on Gholdengo, which obviously is its bread and butter, just blocking any status you want to use. And of course, this makes it great at dealing with things like defog. Its typing lets you block Rapid Spin as well. And that's the next thing. Ghost Steel typing is incredible, defensively and offensively, which I'll get into. Ghost Steel is just one of the best typings you could possibly ask for, especially in conjunction with the hazard blocking good as gold. I mean, we've only ever seen one other Ghost Steel before, and that was Aegislash. And if you're around back when Aegislash was in its heyday, you know that thing was a monster. Of course, it had its own reasons for also being crazy, but its typing was definitely a big part of that. Now, Gholdengo just has only a few utility options itself outside of just sitting there. Thunder Wave is its main way of making progress, but it can also use Nasty Plot to be more offensively threatening and Recover to stay around. And with this guy around, you have basically three options to get rid of hazards, since it's probably going to be accompanying a Spikes user or a Webs user, and that's Court Change, so Cinderace basically, Tidy Up, which is restricted to only a few mediocre at best Pokemon, and then a pick I've occasionally seen, Neutralizing Gas plus Defog, Galarian Weezing. Pretty much the only thing that can actually threaten Gholdengo out and get the hazards off or changed is Cinderace because of that fire typing. Because, I mean, Mouse Hold with Tidy Up, can't really touch Gholdengo. Galarian Weezing dies to make it rain. This is the main reason people like to use Gholdengo, and it's good at what it does. But I want to talk about what else it can do. And before I get into that, I want to talk about its stats. Now, by OU standards, these are decent stats. Now, really only the special attack jumps out, which 133 is really, really good. But the HP, the defense, special defense speed, these are all kind of just fine. They're decent, they're not bad, they're not great, they don't stand out. But they actually really get the job done for Gholdengo. And I appreciate these stats because they're not min-maxed to hell. The attack and special attack are obviously pretty heavily weighed against each other in favor of special attack. But other than that, it has a pretty good stat spread. It lets you customize it a lot. It can be fast with Scarf, it can be bulky on one end or the other, but I'll get into that a bit. First, I want to talk about its offensive potential. Now, of course, with Nasty Plot, this thing is pretty brutal against slower Pokemon, because it's hard for those fat guys to touch Gholdengo, and it can pretty easily get up Nasty Plots and recover off damage. And its stab in Shadow Ball and the signature move Make It Rain is pretty incredible offensively. Shadow Ball, one of the best spammable moves in pretty much any tier it finds itself in, and Make It Rain is a rare case of a really good Steel type move, especially on the special side, which, basically anything else is like Flash Cannon, or if you're Iron Crown, you get Tachyon Cutter, which is cool, but Make It Rain is probably the best special Steel move we've ever seen. I mean, not probably, it is. Let's be honest here. But if you want to be more offensive, Gholdengo actually gets a lot of really cool coverage options. It gets Dazzling Gleam, Thunder and Thunderbolt, Focus Blast, Psychic, and Psyshock. This lets it hit a lot of things. Dazzling Gleam is good against Dark types that may want to switch in on a Shadow Ball, as well as Terra Dark Clefable, which may otherwise kind of wall you and try to set up what's called Mind. Thunder and Thunderbolt can take out things like Dondoza, which, if they're specially invested, can reasonably take on Shadow Balls. I mean, not forever, it's more of a stop check, but still something people might do. Focus Blast, this is great for hitting any normal types that may want to switch in on your Ghost Stab, as well as Steel types, thinking they can switch in on Make It Rain. Not something you generally see, but it is an option nonetheless. And then finally we have Psychic and Psyshock. Really Psyshock being the relevant one here, because it lets you hit Blissey. In a stall matchup, if they don't have Clefable, it's going to be Blissey who comes in, and its only way of stopping you is going to be sitting in front of you, clicking Calm Mind, and outlasting your Make It Rains, since you can't touch it with Shadow Ball. But if you run Nasty Plot, Stab, and Psyshock, and they don't have anything other than the Blissey to stop you specially, you just 6-0. So Psyshock, niche pick, but viable in the red circumstances. Another thing that I've seen to make progress in UUbers, UUbers, whatever, is Air Balloon Thief. The idea being that your Air Balloon's gonna eventually get popped since it's a kind of medium-paced Pokemon. And then once you lose that Air Balloon, you can use Thief to steal leftovers, heavy-duty boots, and really mess with basically anything that you want. Because stealing that item can be pretty consequential. The only way it can really backfire is if you steal a Choice Band off of Zacian, but even then, Zacian's a lot less of a problem if you do that. And like I said, this thing dunks on stall. If you're running a Nasty Plot set, even if you're not running Psyshock for Blissey, maybe running Nasty Plot, Recover, and Stab options, Blissey can only sit in front of you typically. And Clefable, the other Pokemon that would try to wall you specially, it has to Terra to get out of that Make It Rain weakness, which is crucial. Yeah, Stall hates to see this guy because it's very hard to make progress against Gholdengo. It's the chip methods that Stall uses to make progress in general. And between its defensive typing and its access to recover, this thing is a nightmare for Stall to fight. And now finally I want to talk about this thing defensively. Like I said, this thing sometimes runs Air Balloon, especially when you have scary things like Landorus Incarnate running around. And in some cases, Air Balloon Gholdengo actually just completely shuts down a few Pokemon. This includes Lando I, which will oftentimes run Nasty Plot, Focus Blast, Sludge Bomb, and Earth Power. If you have an Air Balloon, can't touch you. Same goes for Physical Arceus Poison, which is typically running Poison Jabber, Gunk Shot, Earthquake, and maybe E-Speed. And also Bulky Dragonite. A Bulky Dragonite typically going to be Dragon Dance, Roost, and then Extreme Speed and Earthquake. All three of those sets, which are reasonably common, if you play a few games you'll probably run into one or the other. You just completely wall them. But more relevant is the fact that this thing just checks a lot of stuff. Zacian, if it's not clicking Crunch, really struggles. Magearna, its typical options don't really hit you significant damage. Sneasler is a big one, because Sneasler typically is just gonna set up, with Unburden, Grassy Seed, try to Swords Dance. Unless it goes Terra Dark, Night Slash, or Lash Out, can't touch you. Acrobatic sets do 37 after +2 to defensive Gholdengo, which is honestly huge, because Sneasler is a massive threat, and being able to just have one Pokemon that does a lot of other stuff and just check something like that is very valuable. And of course, the Ghost typing is also super valuable against Zamazenta. Zamazenta basically can't do it by press shenanigans while you exist, which again makes it really valuable. And before I end this off, I just want to take a note of the amount of moves that this thing switches in on, right? Because we have 3 immunities, which is big. Fighting and normal are actually both really relevant, because E-Killer Arceus, or I should say Arceus Terra Normaling, to try to replicate E-Killer is pretty common. So being able to wall that is nice. But then the number of resistances this guy has is massive. Grass, Steel, Psychic, Ice Bug, Rock Flying, Dragon Fairy. Of course, some of these are more useful than others. Resisting Fairy in a tier where Zacian and Magearna are dominant. Obviously, more useful than resisting Psychic, which you barely see. But my point is that Gholdengo just has so many resistances and immunities that even though its defensive stats are kind of middling and honestly not even that good by UUbers standards, it's able to make up for that by just not taking damage or taking half damage from so many moves in the game. And typically, its very few weaknesses are pretty easy to see coming. If Zacian is switching in on you and clicking Swords Dance, it's going to have like Terra Ground or Terra Fire, and you can play accordingly. So yeah, that's basically my summary of Gholdengo and kind of what it does in the tier. I think it has a lot going for it with the typing, of course, the ability, and I think it's really customizable. I think Gholdengo is worth a lot more than just sticking on a team with hazard stacking and kind of calling it there. I think Gholdengo could be used on other team structures as well, and maybe you'll use it after you see this. If you're listening, thanks for watching and hope you learned something. Thanks.